Welcome everyone to Eyes on Books, the Laguna Woods Village video book review. Today we will be discussing a book by the New York Times best-selling author Sheldon Siegel. His latest book, Final Out, stars ex-spouses Mike Daly and Rosie Fernandez, who are San Francisco public defenders. I'm Mike Holtzman. Terry is very experienced with Rosie and Mike because she's read a lot of his books. I'm introduced to them for the first time, so we have a slightly different view of how these two's relationships have come around.
This book was number 12 out of a series of 12. And out of this book, out of the series, I've read 7 of the 12. And I must say that the two main characters, Rosie and Mike, you really come to know them. It's like family. You grow up with them from the very beginning over a 24-year span, or so you're led to believe it's a 24-year span. Now, this is a legal thriller. There is a murder that happens, and now you have to decide who done it. As the author says, it's a sodit. Some other dude did it. And that's how he's going to defend the person who's been accused. So you have to follow from the beginning.
It's very interesting that he goes back and his character development is so well done that after a while, I seem to know the same 24 years history of these two. They're marvelous characters. He describes each one in detail, and their interaction with each other and with the other characters is very picturesque. And it's done in San Francisco. And if you're a San Francisco native, you must really love these descriptions of the different areas within San Francisco. But not being aware of most of these areas, even though I've heard of them, he still painted beautiful pictures of all these different areas and restaurants, and makes the book flow along with this mystery that he keeps going. Some other dude did it was his whole premise for trying to get one juror to make his defendant innocent.
And the interesting part with the character development is Mike Daly, who is one of the public defenders, he started out as a priest. And you say, well, how did this all happen? But he discovered that the priesthood wasn't for him. So he finally converts over to the legal end of life. And then he winds up getting married to Rosie, and they both move on with their lives. They have children, and their lives develop from there. And they have very successful lives in the legal arena.
It's very interesting how, like you said, he started from thinking he was going to be a priest, and then his father was a cop, his brother was a cop, and he turned more towards the legal side of it and went to school and became a lawyer. And again, when he met Rosie, at some point in their relationship, they had a business together, and now he finds himself working for her. But the plot of the book, as you said, his client is accused of this murder, and they basically don't know how, they don't have proof that he didn't do it, but they tried to show that all these other people could have done it.
And there is a cast of characters in this book, and you look at each one as they delve into what's going on, and you say, oh yeah, they did it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait a minute. that one did it. Oh no, that one did it.
Actually, they painted the victim. They showed all the flaws in this victim and why he had all these other people who could have had motives to kill him. So you, in your mind, you're not deciding, wait, even though we don't know for sure, we do see that, wow, that guy could have done it, that guy could have done it. And he keeps this thing flowing throughout the whole entire book.
He sure does.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where you say, okay, they're all guilty. Everybody's guilty.
I found it interesting because this Saudi, some other dude did it, is not something that they made up. This is a legal term, basically, that are used by public defenders throughout the country. And it works for his book, so let me tell you that.
And our author is a lawyer.
Yes. The author is a lawyer, and he, speaking to people I've actually turned people onto this book who are legal, in the legal field, and they said it's amazing how descriptive and how accurate the court scenes are from real court scenes in real life.
And they also bring in other characters, and the characters come to life. Not the characters who are helping to defend his client. So there's his brother, who's a private detective and who has to work all these odd hours to find evidence that works against all the people who are being accused and to try and free his client. And
all these other people who are basically defending themselves as his brother goes around and tries to point fingers. They're giving reasons why, oh no, they would have never done it, as low lives as they might have been. You didn't know who to believe and who not to believe. It was
they were
really
pretty shady, weren't they?
There were a bunch of very shady characters in this book. So it did flow. It did flow beautifully throughout the book. And I personally didn't read the book. I listened to it. And the narrator of the book was marvelous with the different accents, and he just kept, you just felt you were listening to these people throughout the entire book. It was really well done.
And that's another difference between us, because I read it. And there's a lot of humor interspersed throughout this book. But you can see the humor because it's italicized throughout the book.
Yeah. And the actual listening to this narrator with his deep accents, also, I think, you really can't get that by reading. You could only get it by listening. He's almost an actor. So I guess we get two different views of the same issues, but it's very entertaining, and the book flows. The book flows beautifully right to the end.
So what is your opinion? Do we recommend this book and say, yes, go out and get it? I would say most of the books in this series are excellent if you like legal thrillers, because they're all legal thrillers.
Well, it's definitely an enjoyable book. I didn't want to turn it off at any point. I kept turning it off and turning it back on as my life had other things happen. But I would definitely say it's worth listening to.
And since I'm a reader,
it's worth reading also, right?
I would definitely say pick up a good book or download it and start reading, because they're good.
Do you recommend they start with book one?
No, you really don't have to.
No, I didn't have to.
It's a standalone.
Right. This one stood alone. I didn't have to have read the other books. But now I may want to go back and look at some of the history of Rosie and Mike.
Their history is fascinating, and I feel like I became part of the family as I started with the first book and read through. But you sort of get absorbed into this book and the family right from the beginning. So either way, if you want to adopt a family, go right ahead and read one of these books.
Well, you basically know the family, the mother-in-law and his mother-in-law and the kids and the other lawyers that they seem to have grown up with. It's really, really well done. The character development is beautiful.
And even through their divorce, they remain lovers and friends and co-workers. So it's a beautiful relationship all the way around.
It sounds like their relationship now is better than when it was married. When they were married, they seem to get along beautifully. And like you said, just listening to the two of them and hearing his thoughts as she talks or as he talks, it's just seems to be a nice relationship now.
Okay, so I guess we both make the recommendation that pick up this book.
Pick up this book and give it a shot.
We'll be right back with author Sheldon Siegel. Anyway, I have the final out was your 12th book of this particular set of books, correct?
Yes.
Are you planning to do any more in this set, or is the final out your last book?
I'm continuing to write, and in fact, we just released the 13th book. It is called Last Call. It looks like this.
Okay.
I can do that. And it is a story of a murder out in San Francisco's Sunset District behind Big John Dunleavy's bar on Irving Street. So the series is going to continue, and I'm working on number 14 right now.
Wait a minute, it's on Bourbon Street?
Irving.
Oh, okay. And it still has Mike Daly and Rosie Fernandez?
Yes, yes, it does. Mike and Rosie are going to be putting away or chasing bad guys for a long time, because I have a lot of fun writing these stories.
See, I thought you were going to start turning it over to Natty and a whole other new generation of people.
Well, you know, they keep that may happen at some point in the future, but not for a few more years. I'm going to keep going for a while.
They have such a great relationship. Did you ever think of making this a TV series? This is really marvelous. These two.
Oh yeah, thanks. We've had some discussions about TV, but nothing's ever gotten beyond the discussion stages. So if any of your viewers and listeners are in the TV business and would be interested, we're for sale. We're available, and I really do think, all kidding aside, that it would make a good would make a good series. You know, like a Netflix series or you know, Amazon or something, but maybe someday.
I have read most of the books in this particular series.
Thank you.
I never thought I'd be sitting here talking to you.
Well, it's always fun to chat with one of my readers.
Yeah, I'm very thrilled about it. And I have to tell you, I've got to compliment you because Mike, this was the first book in this series that he has read or listened to. And I am a fan of this particular series. So I feel like I'm part of the family right now. You really come to know and enjoy and get really involved in the characters in this book and the series.
And being I didn't read your book. I listened to it, and Tim Campbell is great. He's a great narrator, but you do such a nice job with the character development that I don't feel, even though Terry knows their history, you make, even if you pick this book up as the first book, you have no problem getting to know the characters, and you feel right away that they're that you know what their history is, and you enjoy you enjoy their character development just as well, I believe, even if you don't go in order and get all your books done. Although I'd probably want to go back and see some of the earlier ones.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's kind of what I'm shooting for here. I write books, the kind of books that I like to read, and I like character-driven fiction. And, my hope for everybody is they'll want to check in on Mike and Rosie and Pete and Big John and Nick the Dick and everybody, every year or two to see what they're up to. And, the characters do age over time. Things change in their lives. In the early books, they were in private practice. And now in the later books, they're back at the public defender's office, which is kind of where I think they should have been all along. But that's really kind of my hope, that people will buy into the characters and enjoy the characters. And people often ask me, are you like Mike? And the answer is, Mike sounds just like me, and Rosie sounds just like my wife, Linda. But I'm not an ex-priest from San Francisco. I'm a Jewish guy from Chicago, although I've lived here for 40 years now. And Linda's not a lawyer. Linda has a degree in computer science and spent 25 years doing computer graphic shots for George Lucas. But the characters sound a lot like us. Linda says I'm not even pretending to write the characters anymore. I'm just making up stories where I channel whatever goes through my head on a particular day. And I think there's a certain element of truth to that.
Mike and Pete have such a great relationship. Do you have a brother? Are you talking from your experience, or you just invented this type of relationship? What a wonderful relationship the brothers have.
It took my brother Ben, who's actually my older brother, who still lives in the Chicago area. It took him 3 or 4 books to figure out that he's Pete. Although, my brother is not a private investigator or an ex-cop. My brother works for in the banking business in Chicago. But yeah, I mean, Pete's a really solid character, and I needed him because, Mike's a lawyer, and lawyers can't do things that private investigators can do. So, yeah, Pete's kind of the unsung hero in the whole story, and he's a lot of fun to write. I'd also note to your readers, by the way, that although in real life I'm a lawyer, and I have been since 1983, I am not a criminal defense attorney. I'm a corporate lawyer with a big firm in Embarcadero Center in San Francisco. So even though I've written 13 novels about murder trials, I've never actually handled a criminal case, not even a parking ticket. So I get a lot of help on these books from my friends who are prosecutors and police officers and public defenders and judges, and I'm always very grateful and think very lucky when reviews say that my books are very authentic, because I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants most of the time. But I do have real, criminal defense attorneys and prosecutors vet my stuff, which makes sure that I get at least the technical legal stuff right.
I read through the acknowledgments on this book, and you do have so many people. Do they read through all these books and correct all the technicalities in it? Or, how do you get all this buy-in from other individuals?
Well, people really enjoy being part of the process. On the technical stuff, there's, about a half a dozen of those people. Some are lawyers, some are other writers. I have a couple friends at the public defender's office in San Francisco who go through the legal stuff very carefully. And, people are really generous. If you call them up, say, hey, I'm writing a book, would you mind taking a look at it? A lot of people will say yes, and particularly over time, I have developed kind of a board of advisors of people who really know what they're talking about, and they do help me out. and they're good sources of material. I have friends who are police officers, and if you take a police officer out for, lunch, and you ask them what are the most interesting cases you've ever worked on, you get a lot of material, or at least a lot of ideas for cases that you could use in a story.
I'm a huge baseball fan, lifelong baseball fan, and I like this book, but you're getting down into the dugout, and did you actually get experience to get into the clubhouse and talk to people in the giant organization, or was this fiction?
I have some moles in the Giants organization whose names I can't reveal, and I have not gotten into the clubhouse, but I was able to get enough information about that that I'm quite confident that the descriptions are right. And the stuff about, how general managers and agents work, I was able to glean that from some people who are in that business. I'd always wanted to be a general manager, or what I wanted to be was the center fielder on the White Sox, but that didn't work out. And I do love baseball, and the genesis of this book came about because I was down in the area behind the ballpark, and I thought, well, this would be a good place to find a body in the bay, and the story kind of went from there. But yeah, I have a couple of insiders. I have a lot of insiders in a lot of areas now. I know some people at the Giants. I know people. I know a number of priests and ex-priests who help me, because Mike is an ex-priest, so we deal with that stuff. I wrote a book a while back called The Confession, which was a story about a priest who was accused of murder, and people were absolutely convinced that I have a mole at the San Francisco Archdiocese. Oh, forgive me, my cat is walking across my desk. You may have just seen her tail. That's Betty the cat, who sleeps next to my computer all day.
So what else do we need to know about you?
I'm a native of Chicago. I did write, by the way, one book set in Chicago called The Terrorist Next Door, that's set on the southeast side of Chicago. And I'm going to do a sequel to that at some point. But I'm a really unlikely author when you get down to it. I'm 63 years old. I grew up in the Chicago area. I graduated from the University of Illinois in Champaign with a degree in accounting. And I moved out here to the Bay Area in 1980 to go to law school at UC Berkeley. And I have worked for big law firms ever since, but strictly as a corporate lawyer. So, the line from corporate lawyer to best-selling novelist is a very tenuous one. And, I'd always wanted to write novels since I was a kid, and I finally got around to it as I was getting close to my 40th birthday, and got very fortunate that they've sold and they've done well.
Well, I believe we're fortunate as well, because I love your writing style.
Oh, thank you. I do get to say in the books all the things I think in my head but never get to say in the real world, so it's kind of fun. And for those of your viewers and listeners who have time to go back to the first book. My first book's about a murder in a big law firm. The book is called Special Circumstances, and that kind of started the whole series. And my impetus for writing it was to get revenge on everybody who'd ever been mean to me. And that was a pretty long list. So if any of your viewers are thinking about writing a novel, revenge is a really good motivator. And I would encourage you to do that if you can. Also, I'm obviously kidding about that, but I had this novel in me for a long time.
I researched you a little bit, and I saw where you had a terrible experience with some automatic weapons in a building you were in. Are you ever thinking of putting any of that information into a book?
Yeah, I mean, let me take a half a step back and explain for everybody what happened there. And forgive me, but I got to be serious about this for a couple of minutes. in 1993, I was working at the Pettit and Martin law firm in the 101 California office tower in downtown San Francisco. And on July 1st, around 3 o'clock, a disgruntled former client came into our firm, and he was armed with an AR-15 and a couple of pistols, and he walked through the halls and killed 8 people. One more died a couple of years later of wounds that injuries we think he sustained that day. So it was really a very sobering experience, and I was there that day. I was up 2 floors above where the guy came through, and got behind a locked door, and he fortunately didn't come our way. And so, among other things, we closed that firm about 2 years later because it was obviously really hard to recruit people after that, and moved to the Shepherd Mullen firm where I work now. But it was after that experience, and by the way, I hope it never ever happens to anybody. But it was also at a time when we didn't have these mass shootings seemingly every week or two. And it's just a horrible thing. And a bunch of us at the firm have been working on sensible gun legislation for almost 30 years now, and we make a little progress and then we move a little bit backwards, it seems. But in any event, when we moved over to the new firm in 1995, and that's when I decided if I'm ever going to get around to writing the story that I was probably never going to write, that I would start it then. And the story in my first book is about a murder in a big law firm, and it was not really, the plot line really is not similar to what happened at our firm. But I was a little uncomfortable about writing that story for a while because of the events at the firm. Rosie's mom, by the way, Sylvia, who's also one of my favorite characters, sounds a lot like my mom and Linda's mom kind of combined. And she's going to be around for a long time. She's a really, really strong character.
The characters are just amazing. You've done such an incredible job with them.
Thank you very much for visiting with us down here in Laguna Woods. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. I hope I can come visit you in person one of these days.
We just had the most incredible discussion with Sheldon Siegel, the author of Final Out. I want to thank you all for joining us for this session of Eyes on Books, and I want to welcome you to join us again next month.